Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's episode, I'll be talking about number one, the software company selling off. And second of all, I'll be talking about whether or not ASML is actually a sell at today's price and whether or not I'm thinking of trimming that position. Okay, so let's talk about your software company selling off first and whether or not I think the software sell-off is actually justified. The AI sell-off is justified. So I was actually reading an article by Howard Marks. So Howard Marks was talking about how AI has revolutionized and how AI is becoming more and more productive today. So over here it says that software companies have been selling off aggressively. Howard Marks recently explored in his memo on the implications of AI and how technology has experienced an exponential leap. We're moving rapidly from simple 2010s translation tools to the ChatGPT era. So what Howard Marks said was that AI was first implemented in the 2010s when we had simple translation as well as suggestions in your iPhone, for example. And currently we're seeing broader usage and broader acceptance of AI. This sudden massive exposure has triggered a central question. Are the current fears of software replacement justified or are they exaggerated? So I'll be expanding on this. So the core narrative that the markets are pricing in today is this simple argument, which is that AI can create your agents, which will eventually replace and displace your software companies. The markets believe that autonomous intelligent agents will soon handle everything. That's the core argument that the markets are trying to push today. But there's actually a lot more than this. So to understand how AI works, AI is currently still a game of probability. What do I mean by that? So for example, if you go and search on ChatGPT, this was one that was explained by Howard Marks. The output that is generated by ChatGPT is all based on probability. So what they will try and do is they will think of what is the most probable word after your question itself. So they'll look at your question and then they'll use whatever they were trained on to try and think about what is the most probable answer to your question. So AI is currently mostly probabilistic. So it is some sort of a sophisticated guessing, not conscious thinking. And as Howard Marks says, it is a hypothesis of the historical past. So what your AIs do today is that they look at historical data and then they try and predict what is the most probable outcome as a result of that. So probability means that there will be hallucination. So hallucination means when you're typing into the ChatGPT or the AI itself, and then they give you some random answers that don't make sense, and the AI actually think it makes sense. So the inherent reliance on probability means that technology is fundamentally prone to hallucination. It predicts the most likely answer, which is not always the factually correct answer. So there are three different phases of AI today that I would like to talk about as well. This was released by Howard Marks. So you said you have your chat AI, which is your ChatGPT. You have your tool AI. Tool AI is what you use on Excel. So for example, your Claude plugin, whatever shortcuts you have on Excel, on Adobe, for example, all those are currently still tool AI. And we're currently moving into the third phase, which is called agentic AI. So agentic AI requires your agents, which is your AI agents, to predict and innovate and find solutions like humans itself. So the role of an agentic AI currently is to replace a human brain. But the problem is this. Your AI right now is mostly probabilistic, meaning to say they're still prone to hallucination. And if they're still prone to hallucination, what that means is that it cannot entirely act like a human. It remains properly usable only after explicitly instructed and monitored by a human, meaning to say only when you prompt it, then it will go and do something. It cannot innovate and find solutions for itself. So to expand on this point, we are currently facing a pricing risk, not a displacement risk. What do I mean by that? So for AI to completely displace your software companies, they need to come up with innovative solutions. And currently we don't have that. Besides that, it also has to be flawless. And because there's this hallucination problem, we will never have that. So because your agents hallucinate and lack true innovation, companies cannot reliably build their own agents to wholly displace purchased software. Therefore, the threat to the software industry, in my opinion, is not displacement. It is pricing risk, which is what the markets are pricing in today, of course. So there are three different phases of market transformation. So the first one is disruption. Disruption is when a new technology comes in to a very niche market in general. Normally, they will attack the small markets first because the small markets are the easier ones to attack by your startup companies. Second of all is displacement. So displacement means that development of the new technology moves up market. So it attacks the ones that are higher on top, the bigger companies at the top. And then the last stage is diffusion. Diffusion means you completely revolutionize how humans act. And the technology is basically everyday adoption and usage. So we're currently sitting between phase 1 as well as phase 2, which is disruption as well as displacement. So what that means is that your niche companies, your very, very small companies, your very small software companies, they will likely be disrupted and displaced by AI first because it's easier to attack those regions as compared to the larger enterprises. So because disruption starts from the bottom, AI companies operating in highly niche segments will likely be the ones displaced first by your startup companies. On the other hand, this also means that the companies, the software companies that focus on more mundane tasks, repetitive work, like for example, Excel, will likely be the ones that will not run the risk of being replaced. And instead, they'll be able to adopt this AI and create some sort of an ecosystem out of it. The most powerful incumbents, such as Microsoft and their suite of products, possesses the deep moat required to defend their core business, in my opinion, of course. So all in all, to summarize it in one point, AI is currently probabilistic, meaning it's prone to hallucination, and your AI agents are probably a long way away. What that means is that your software companies may not be as prone to disruption as what the market is pricing in today. So that's for all the software holders. I'm not looking to add into any other companies apart from Microsoft. So hopefully this presents a different view from what the markets are showing you guys today. Okay, next segment, let's talk about ASML as well as the entire AI trade. So I own a portion of ASML, of course. The company is currently down around 4% today, and it's currently trading at 44 times of price to earnings. So is the company a sell today? In my opinion, I'm cautious about ASML currently. I think I'm very close to trimming this position. So there are some arguments online, of course, which is hold on to your winners, don't sell your winners. The companies will keep compounding, don't look at the valuation. You must have a different methodology when it comes to selling as well as buying a stock. Because when you buy a stock, you should aim for massive pessimism. When you sell a stock, you shouldn't sell it. Basically, you should be like Warren Buffett and then hold it for the next 20 years. But I think there's a second way to think about it as well, which is that when you're looking at a company itself, the only way for you to want to hold to a company is if the intrinsic value of this company can continue growing for the next 10, 20 years, predictably. But the problem with all tech companies in general is that you can't really project it for the next 10, 20 years. It's almost impossible for you to do that. Who saw the software companies getting disrupted maybe 2 years ago? Everyone was talking about how software is the biggest thing out there because you have high margins, you have high ROIC, you have incredibly high revenue growth for a lot of these companies, and they were all trading at a premium to the market. So my point is this, for tech companies in general, it is almost impossible for you to project out over the next 10, 20 years. And in the case of ASML today, if you don't project it out that far, the company is expensive. I mean, it's trading at 44 times earnings. And from a DCF analysis, this company has to grow around 20% over the next 5 to 10 years in order to justify today's valuation. Whether or not you think the company is able to do so is dependent on your assumptions in general. So I'll move on. Let's talk about some risk that I see in ASML today. So I was speaking to someone that previously worked in TSMC in Global Foundries. Basically, he's worked in the semiconductor before. And he raised one point that I find really interesting, which is that for ASML today, if you look at the customers that they have, they're trying to reduce the China ones, they're trying to increase the US ones. Meaning to say the company is growing because China sales are dropping and the US sales are increasing over time because Trump is trying to bring in all the fabs into the US. Like for example, he brought TSMC in for the Arizona fab, and other US companies are also building up their own fab. Like a good example is Micron. But I think there's another way for you to think about it as well. Basically thinking bottoms up. So if you look at the fabs, look at the fabs that TSMC have, look at the fabs that all your different semiconductor companies have. TSMC has all of their fabs in Asia, and they have some in the US. So they currently have one in the US, it's your Arizona. If you look at Samsung, Samsung is in Asia. It's a memory chip company. SK Hynix is in Asia as well. So a lot of your chip companies are in Asia. Why are they in Asia? Because the productivity in Asia, objectively speaking, is a lot higher than in the US. And your wages in the US are a lot higher as compared to the ones in Asia. So this person that I spoke to, he basically raised the point that a lot of your fabs are actually in Asia because productivity over there is a lot higher. So the narrative of ASML bringing in all the fabs into the US is something that's flawed, and it probably won't be successful in the long run. Why is that so? Because productivity is lower, cost is a lot higher, and it's not sustainable. If you look at one of AMD's plants in the US, for example, it is not successful at all. So that's one of the concerns that I have with ASML in the long run, which is the sustainability of the growth. Second of all, I just don't think the stock is cheap. It's at 44 times price to earnings ratio. I think there are a lot of other ways for you to play AI if you're looking to bet on this entire data center build up. Like for example, energy is one of them. So I've been looking at the utilities index. This is more of a macro trade or swing trade if I ever add into this position. So for your data centers, you have many different ways to obtain energy. For example, you have your grids, you have uranium. So uranium is currently a very big thing because uranium is used on nuclear. And for nuclear energy, you have this thing called your small modular reactors, which is more mobile as compared to an actual grid. And it also allows for energy generation when there's no wind or solar. And then of course, you have other methods like wind, like solar. Okay, so my main point is this. For your data centers, if you looked at what all the CEOs have said in common, they've all said that the main bottleneck coming up will be the energy requirement. And if you look at Trump's policies currently, what he's doing is he is regulating the electricity prices for the US households because he doesn't want the data centers to use higher levels of electricity driving up electricity prices. And so this is extremely evident that electricity will likely be the next bottleneck in this entire AI data center build out. So there is some sort of an idea that I have currently, I'm still digging into it, but it's just to long the utilities index, so the XLU index. In the XLU index, you have a lot of different regulated utility companies, and it's not 100% AI data center exposure, meaning to say they have caps on the prices. But I view this as the safest way to play this entire AI trade if you're trying to play on this AI trade, of course. And there's an interest rate tailwind as well, which is when your interest rates fall, a lot of these highly levered utilities companies, they will eventually recover in terms of earnings because of lower interest expenses. So that's one idea that I currently have. I have many different ideas and I'll share with you guys soon. Hopefully this video has been useful. And check out the Substack, it's the link in the description. I'll share all my ideas there. Feel free to check it out. And yeah, please subscribe.